Okay, good morning. Happy Easter, 2026. Um, it's going to be well, I guess not much different than most of the stuff I do. Today I have a couple experiments I want to do. So I'm going to be messing with the mood and the Zoia today. We'll get into that in a second. Just one other change outside of the Zoia and the mood I already made is I brought the Vertex Nile back instead of the Warm Audio Pedal 76. I'm just going to have to relegate that Pedal 76 to my pedal graveyard, at least for now, because I just don't feel like dealing with it. And the Nile works great in a different way. So, what do I got here? I got nothing on here. The only thing you're hearing is the stereo spread in the Zoia. Everything else is dry. I'll turn that off too. There you go. That's just my dry tone. Both pickups on my new Les Paul. Nile. Just wakes everything up in a different way, the Pedal 76, even though they're both 1176 style. Okay, PC2A. Equilux. And then I'm adding in the ringer bringer from Warm Audio. Just add a little bit of that, like I've said before, that's sour. Okay, and then that's all I'm going to have on in the front end. So I'm going to do a couple things here. On the mood, I just want to try and dial in the left side, which I have in slip mode. That's what I got it doing right now. So I'm going to make some noises with that thing here. And then in the, well, let me turn on the Zoia again, just so you can hear the stereo spread. I currently have an envelope follower attached to the stereo spread. And let's just get into it right now. Let's turn off the mood. So, again, this envelope follower is attached to the delay of the stereo spread module. And what that does is, and I don't know if you can see it here, so that's the delay. Right now it's hovering at around 2.5, almost 3 milliseconds. But when I play, notice that the envelope follower is pushing it up to about 16, 17, 18, 19. So the more input, that envelope follower is pushing that stereo image wider. Now here in isolation, it's actually kind of pleasing. You can hear that separation happen, and now you can hear that stereo image gravitating towards back to more of a mono sound. But what I'm finding is that's something I can keep in my back pocket for future reference, because it's working okay. But when it comes to me, what happens is I'll put a pad on, or I'll put a loop in the mood. And it keeps that stereo spread open, so that kind of effect of the stereo field moving around kind of gets lost when I have a pad going of some sort, or if I'm constantly playing. Now if I didn't have a rhythm coming through it or something like this, and we'll get rid of that. That was just an example, but if I'm just playing a lead through it or something, it's kind of cool to hear it spread and go back down. And I normally obviously don't have the mood that loud. I just had it turned up for my experiments. But even in that case, it keeps it at around 18 to 21 seconds. So, Not as useful in this application, but again, very nice thing to remember for future reference if I'm building a different patch with the Zoia. So we're going to get rid of that, which is easy. So I'm just selecting the module. This white module is the envelope follower. Gone. So really I just need to find a stereo spread that I like. Let's change this up a little. Just made the mood a little less intrusive here. And I would suggest, if you are using the stereo spread module in the Zoia, whenever you have, for instance, prior to putting that envelope follower on there, I was running at about 18.5 milliseconds, but I just noticed that 19.35 here, something interesting happens with it. You know, there's all kinds of things because I have my direct analog signal coming in channel 1 and I'm blending it with this stereo Q-Cent. There's almost assuredly some sort of phase cancellation and weird things that happen. And let's see if I can monitor in mono here. Let's see. I don't know if you'll hear that on your end, but I can. So in a mixer, when you see it, a mono button, it's because you want to check it in mono to make sure there's no phase cancellation going on. This sounds pretty good. So 19.35 for whatever reason is when that thing happens, and all of a sudden you got that stereo field that's very pleasing. Okay, so let's save that. That's the first thing I want to do here. Okay, so the next thing is I want to, and let's go over to the first page. So this top module, this 3-section module here, that's the first delay line. As you can see, it's set at 16 seconds. I want to take it, oops, went too fast. I'm going to take it back to about 12 seconds. 16 is a little bit long for me. Okay, and then this is the other one. So we're just going to take that back to 12. And as I said before, I keep them off by one click. So I got one at 11.9, one at 12. So they kind of they drift from each other. Now, the next thing I want to do after this, we're going to experiment with this right now. I'm going to put something in there. So, you know, we all have our typical length of phrasing we do. And as you can see, I added in maybe one more note than I wanted to at a 12-second delay. But the thing I really want to check here is if I'm fading the loop. So instead of the loop being permanent here, I just backed off my fade control down below 2, so that, as you can hear, the loops are fading out rather quickly. So now I can keep the recording and playing on, and then just keep playing into it, and hopefully it'll fade out in a reasonable way. At 16 seconds, it's just too long when you're trying to fade out a loop. You got to wait an extra 16 seconds for every loop to fade out, which is, in my setting, because I'm go ready set, is a little too long to wait. Something I learned with the Chase Bliss Habit is a 1 minute long delay is way too long. Even to treat it like a looper. If you have 2 layers going, that's 2 minutes worth of information. Just for something I use as a pad, but as you can hear, this is fading out. Yeah, I think 12 seconds is a little bit long, so let's go back to the delay lines. Take them back to about 10 seconds. Okay, so I've got one delay line at 10 seconds, the other delay line at 10.1. So as you can hear, it faded out reasonably well. Now the 2 automatically recording loopers are still set at 16-second loops, but because the start position of those loops is always changing, they very rarely play, if at all, at a full 16 seconds. So I don't, even though they're still, you're hearing the automatically recording loopers regurgitating stuff right now, but as you can hear, it didn't go on forever. I still think 8 seconds is probably right, though. I was going to try something different just because 8 seconds is kind of vanilla, but I think 8 seconds is going to be what we want. And ultimately, I could probably add value buttons so I could just manually change it if I'm in the mood. But okay, so one side's 8, one side's 7.99. And this is a little bit of that. If you've listened to any of my couple recent videos, I talked about how I wasn't sure if when I started fading my sound on sound loops, if the loopers would step on them, because the loopers aren't going to fade along with them. So if the loop's still playing if it's still playing a loop that's at full volume and the rest is fading out, it might cause an issue, and I think that's what happened. Excuse me, that's what happened right there. So I can change those loops. So let's just change this looper. Instead of a 16-second looper, let's change them to 8-second loopers. And then I also have to change these LFOs to 8-second LFOs. And I don't normally do this because when you're doing the automatically recording looper thing, and we're going to find out here again, this is why the Zoia is nice, because I can just find out. I don't have to debate or speculate or anything. I can just try it pretty easily here. So I have 3 LFOs, random waveform LFOs, that are controlling different aspects of each of these loopers. So I changed the looper to a 16-second looper, and then I changed the maximum time of these randomly generating LFOs to just under 8 seconds. So the looper is going to be changing much more often than it was, but who knows, maybe that'll be cool. I'm just going to save my progress there because I have to go to the other looper here as well. Now the sequencer down here, that's tied to tap tempo, so I don't have to worry about that, but the looper itself I do, if I'm going to stick with 8 seconds at least. Nothing like blowing up the universe. We'll turn that back on in a minute. This is stuff that happens when you have a Zoia. Random things destroy the world. If you've ever heard me say that, that's what I mean when I say blow up the universe. Alright, one more LFO here to change. And we'll see if we're still exploding the universe. Sometimes when you change things and there's a lot of stuff going on. Alright, wish me luck. Alright, good. We're back in order. Okay, so all the LFOs controlling the automatically recording loopers have been changed to 8 seconds. Each automatically recording looper has been changed to 8 seconds in those LFOs, so it was originally conceived as a left and a right. So let's add some information into this and see what happens, okay? And, you know, normally I'd fade this in an ambient way, but right now I'm just going to notice how the loopers kicked in much quicker. All right, let's try a little ambient thing here real quick and see how it feels like that. So this is again a situation where I'm not just making a pad. I can actively play into this, a la you know, Frippertronics or Chords of Orion style. Thinking, so remember also, if you've paid attention to what I'm doing with this patch at all, is I have the output of the automatically recording loopers running through a vibrato. I'm thinking the depth on that vibrato might be a little bit too deep. It's getting a little too tape orbally. It might sound okay once I turn on my delay and reverb. Let's try it actually. Alright, Night Sky and Volante on. Yeah, let's go over to that vibrato and take back that depth a little bit. tap in a tempo here. There's also, I'm controlling the Volante's delays with the Zoia is controlling the Volante via tap tempo. But I think as far as the flow goes, as you can hear at 8 seconds, things start to come together a little bit. And that call and response thing I try and do with this stuff. Listen for those high notes. There they are. See, it doesn't take too long for them to come back in. Sorry about the breathing, by the way. Like, allergies are so bad right now where I'm at. Alright, so something else I do when I'm working on a patch like this is making sure I'm not... This patch is for the most part in place, so it's not as big a factor, but on this first screen here, the lower right corner, you can see how much of your processor you're using. And right now it's hovering somewhere under 60%, so I'm definitely good. You can push it up where it spikes at 97, 98%, maybe even sometimes over 100% and get away with it. But I don't like playing that far. But as you can hear, that faded out fairly reasonably. Okay, so aside from tweaking, you know, how fast that stuff fades out, maybe it's fading out a little bit too fast. But now if I want to do that, instead of setting up a pad and then playing in a rhythm on the trio and doing a pseudo song, I can just get lost in this spacey area. Or I can just max out the fade and play exactly the way I have been playing with it. So I guess I'm just building in a little versatility into this patch. Okay, so the other thing that I'm going to mess with here, I think that works. I think 8 seconds is right. And again, you can never save too much. The other thing to remember with a Zoia, because you make connections just by, you know, selecting it and then touching another modules in or out, always clear it before you hit something new. Otherwise, you might inadvertently make connections in there. But I think I've got it. So another thing I like to do here is I'd like to go back and revisit where I made the changes. So there's the delay line. It says 8 seconds. There's the first looper, that says 8 seconds. First LFO, second LFO, third LFO, all at 8 seconds. This is the other looper, roughly 8 seconds. 8 seconds. And everything else is at 8 seconds. Okay, so we're set on that part of the patch. Now, the other part. So I've gone back and forth between having a stereo mixer with 2 left and rights, and with LFOs controlling those. So a 2-channel stereo mixer or a 4-channel mono mixer. Right now what you've been hearing is the 4-channel mono mixer, and the reason I did that is so I could have an LFO on each one of those channels. So each individual delay line and each individual looper has its own panning as well as its own random LFO tied to tap tempo controlling that panning. So for instance, this is, oops, one more. Oops, where am I here? All right, there we go. So if you can see it, you might be able to see it. So that's the tempo I've tapped in left and right, and you can see where that first panning is being controlled by the first LFO, and there's the second. So ultimately everything's being panned into a different place in the stereo field based on the tap tempo. But as cool as that sounds, I don't notice it. I mean, I guess there's reflections here. Let's turn off the reverb and delay. I mean, I guess you hear it moving around a little. So the debate I'm having is, should I change it back to a... So if I have a 2-channel stereo mixer, I'm only going to be able to use 2 LFOs, and each of those LFOs is going to control the left and right panning. So the way I have this set up is this set of delay lines, sequencers, and recording loopers was originally set up as the left side, and then this one was set up as the right side. But when I added the mixer, there's no real left and right side. So I think what I want to do, and let's just do it right now and find out. So you've just heard it. That's with the 4 LFOs controlling it. Let's just change this mixer to 2 channels stereo with panning turned on. Let's get rid of this and this. Okay, now we have just 2 LFOs left, and this LFO should be controlling, what do we got here? So left, right. Okay, so that one's still controlling the properly. Okay, so those are both still connected. I want to make sure you can look at the connections here real quick. Okay, so that is not correct. That should be looper left. So let's get rid of that. And then this should be... So one way you do it is, so I went into the little view screen. You can change the connection list. So I can see it's connected with the delay line. This should be delay left. That's correct. So remember the master delay here is a analog style delay that's feeding those delay lines. So that's what I want. And then this one should be delay right, but I don't think it's, yeah, once I change the mixer, I got to redo that connection. So I have it selected, go to the next page, touch that, now I have it connected to the left and right. And you can see what I have tapped in. I have 567 milliseconds tapped in right now. So where am I here? You can see that it's panning at that rate between the left and right stereo fields. Okay, so obviously these 2 connections got blown up, so I have to go connect this to the output of the left vibrato. Okay, so the looper's now connected there. And then this one needs to be connected to the right output of the vibrato. which I just did there. Okay, and then I need to verify that this is connected correctly, and it is. So now you can obviously hear the hard panning much more readily. Do I want that? I'm going to mute the mic here and just do a little live ambient thing, see what happens. It's fading a little fast, so I turn the fade up to about 4. Keep starting in E minor and I keep ending up in B minor. I don't know how. Okay, so it's present. It's reacting in a timely manner. It's fading, I think, appropriately. I mean, there's something happening here still, but it's not in your face, so I'm okay with that. So let's take the fade up to 100% and then try adding in my trio stuff I do. That's my other workflow I do. And then just see how my pad works at 8 seconds instead of at 16 seconds. It might be too busy. That's something else that I really try and avoid when I'm doing like a reactive pad like this, I guess is what I call it in my head. So I'm going to take this back up to 100%. The fade, that is. I'm taking the fade back up to 100%. So it will not fade out. So anything I pump into here is going to stay. So let's see what happens. I'm just going to start in B minor this time so I don't have to fight it. ended up with a little bit of a quiet intensity thing there, but whatever. This is what you do when you improvise. You just kind of roll with it, see what you get. Alright, just a side note. Last night I spent a little time, because I switched that Nile back in, the Vertex Nile. I spent a little time, dialing into the levels to this new Les Paul I got, in the EQ a little bit. Damn, this is a good sounding guitar. I want to gush about it, but I know it's only been this is only like the fourth time I played this thing. But damn, this thing sounds good. I thought I'd have to work on levels more. Thought I'd have to work on EQ a little more, and I only made a couple little tweaks. But damn, this thing sounds good. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to mess with here, so the loop's still there. We can turn it on, but in this particular setting, the mood is before the Zoia, because we're using the Zoia in stereo now, so the mood has to go before it, because the mood's a mono pedal. And if you haven't looked at my other videos, no, I'm not interested in a Mood Mark II. I've had 3 of them now. Yeah, I had 2 of the original ones and then one of the special edition ones, because I kept thinking that, no, there's something I'm missing about it, and there wasn't something I'm missing about it. I just like the original better. I don't think the Mark II is bad in any way. It's just I like this one better. This one does that X Factor weirdness thing. All the stuff that the new one does is really stuff I don't really want or need. Okay, in any case, let's turn some stuff off here. Now, let's see here. I'm going to have to... Plus, by the way, the change I made on the vibrato, I don't think it's too warbly sounding anymore. Maybe a little bit. Let's work on that for a second. Okay, so that's all the way down. I'm just going to dial it in until I kind of hear the warble, and then maybe back it off a little. So I turned on the Volante only because I'm using the wear and mechanics on the Volante, which also adds modulation. So again, I dialed it in isolation, and then I need to hear how that modulation is sounding mixed in with any other modulation I have. Now I do have modulation going on the night sky. I have a square wave targeting the reverb, so we'll add that in as well. And I think that's why, because if right now I have the width of the vibrato in the Zoia down to just a little over 2, which is very low for a vibrato. But because I'm adding in modulation in the Volante and the night sky, you don't need much. I think that'll do though. So let's save that. And before I forget about it, I'm also going to save this to the memory card so I can post it to patch storage eventually. So we lost my my loop because I saved it to the memory card. No big deal. Look at what it did to the tap tempo. There we go. Bring it back to earth. Okay, so the Zoia. Stretch mode on the right side, tape mode on the right side are what I like the most about this particular pedal, but the left side's a little harder to figure out, and that's where the X Factor stuff starts coming in. So if you're not familiar with the mood, this center toggle here chooses what signal the wet side processes. Okay, so right now I have it on slip mode, which is, I'm going to turn this up so you can hear it better. You know, it's like being in control of a tape machine kind of thing. And you can modulate that. There's an LFO in there, but I don't typically do that. Now, what I was doing with this, okay, so I'm going to turn the clock speed up. You can kind of do a ring mod kind of sound. But now that I have the warm audio, I haven't been doing that. So what I experimented with, so this is slip mode all the way down, which is reverse. This is all the way up, which is forward. Doesn't really sound as much like a ring mod, so reverse sounds a little more. I've been into kind of that slightly sour sound in the background thing. But what you can do is take the clock speed down. And it starts to turn into something else. So let's see what it sounds like with a loop running through there. So let's try something here. So I have the clock speed as low as it'll go before you introduce this noise, which sounds like this, which may be desirable in some settings, but not particularly right now. So it's the slowest clock speed you can get, which gives you a longer micro loop. But because I have the modify knob at its maximum setting on the wet side, that's the lowest frequency you're going to get. So what I want to do here is just brought that down to, it's not going up or down an octave or a fifth. So what I can do then, because I have a lower octave available now on the right side, I can turn it up and get a similar effect. So it gives me more options on the right side. Okay, so let's just say I like that. All right, let's turn that off. So one thing I do, since the mood is before the Zoia now, is once I have the guitar loop part of the trio in, which is, let's just turn down the bass and the drums, which in this case ended up being a little busy, but that's all right. It's a good test. So as you can see, every time this red blinks, it's starting another micro loop. So at this particular clock setting, it's fairly long micro loop. So what I do is I'll typically watch for it to go through one full cycle, and then I'll capture it. Let's bring in the bass and some drums. So this is where, in the moment, I got to make some decisions. So if I'm in the moment, I've got all kinds of stuff going on. I'm a guitar player. All I want to do is play a lead. Let's get this thing done. I usually turn it up or turn down the modify on the tape side until it pops out at me. Okay, so you hear it there. It's just sounding kind of garbled and in your face. So let's change the length of it. Usually a spot where it falls into place. That's at maximum. So maybe I'm not at the right frequency. Okay, let's lengthen it on the left side. This is what makes the mood great. Okay, now I have a lot of delay on the left side in the slip mode. So let's bring it back to a lower frequency and see what I get. There we go. See how it decided to start playing good with us? And this is what I do in the moment. I can just mess with the mix here and see how much I can hear it, because once I start playing, the left side is also receiving signal from the input, so it's also going to process whatever I'm playing here. Forgot what key I'm playing in. What am I in? B? Oh, so I got a reverse guitar out of it. Okay, so that's fine. A little too in my face. So the only takeaway I have from that right now is really all I'm hearing is the reverse guitar. I'm not really hearing the, and let's turn off the rhythm here for a minute and see what we got. So as you can hear, and again, we don't have anything going in the cloud tempo right now, but but I think bringing down the modify on the slip side gives me more options on the right side, because I can start with a much lower, which is this. Now what I could do, because right now, because I have the right side cranked, I can change the mood so it's only processing the left side is only processing the loop side, so I don't have to deal with that reverse guitar getting in your face. And I don't have my delay and reverb on right now. You know, it sounds pretty good. Damn, this guitar sounds good. Which I think I like. So for this particular setup, I'm only going to process the looper through the left side. Now the interesting thing about the Zoia, or excuse me, the Mood, and we're going to find out about this right now. So with the micro looper engaged, it's not going to process my input through the left side. But if I disengage it, let's see if it processes the input. And it does. It's one of the weirdnesses of the Zoia, or excuse me, the Mood, is I can set what gets processed by the wet side only if the right side's engaged, which is a little annoying, but I don't normally have the mix crank this high either. But again, every time I turn the Mood on, something changes on it. So that's just the conclusion I came to in this particular setting. So those are all the changes I wanted to visit today. Just looking, I'm really in love with this guitar. Just looking for excuses to try out some of the things I've been thinking about. So what I'm going to do here is, let's get rid of that busy thing. I think I want to just do some sort of live boy, I can't talk today. What the hell's wrong with me? Some sort of live Frippertronics thing, and then we're going to call it a morning. Thanks for hanging. Thanks for watching. Hopefully it gave you some ideas or at least some insight to what the hell I'm doing here when I'm messing around. But let's see if I can get a good jam out of it. I don't know, it's a um, 8-second loops are still a little long to play leads over, if you ask me. So when I do the trio thing, I'll probably fix the loop into the phase lock loop thing. But I think all those changes worked out nice. I think the stereo field is kind of back. Um, the mood, again, I don't go into the mood with any one setting ever. The mood is always different, and that's what makes that thing amazing. There's no other pedal like that. Um, as much as I kind of promote the Zoia really can't do what the mood does, to be honest. Um, so just for anybody who does ambient or sound on sound stuff, like I don't see it. Well, I mean the count to five, the Montreal Assembly count to five is one I sold off. I don't even know why. Didn't even get that much money out of it, and that one's kind of essential. That would be my big three. I have a count to five, a mood, and a Zoia, and then the delays and the reverbs are less relevant if you ask me. Even though you could say I'm using delays in the Zoia. But yeah, there you go. There's a little more of a dialing in thing I've done here this morning. So until next time.